Hello and welcome to this short gm-widgets tutorial where we're going to be creating a user interface slider. So let's jump right into it. First we're going to need our object slider, and the object slider is going to be a obj GUI widget because we're going to be making sure that this component is within the GUI layer. So now that we've got that, let's inherit the create event, and we're going to need to do a few little setup things here where we need to make sure that the index is set to 0 and the image speed is also set to 0. Okay, so if we think about what we're going to be needing in our slider, is basically the only real thing we're going to need is a button. So we need the button that we're going to be pressing to drag along a bar. So let's go ahead and create a button left. Actually, before we do this, we're actually going to have to create the button object as well. So let's do that real quick, where we create, we're just going to call this obj round button. Simple as that. So this button will also be an obj GUI widget, and maybe we could set this button up, which it should. The only thing this should need is image speed, because remember, we don't want this animating, so we just need to set the image speed to 0. And we might as well assign the sprite. So if we go into our sprites, we should be able to, there it is there, the round button. Okay, so there's our button set up. Now we want to be able to create this button, so we call the script widget underscore create. We pass it our round button, and we don't need to give it any other parameters because we're just passing that in straight from there. So now that we've created our button, we then need to assign a few properties to this button. So we want to make sure that we're anchoring this button to the left of our slider. So we want it to start on the left, and then we also need to then add it to the slider object. So we just add the button. So we just do child add, and then we pass in the button left, and there you go. So now we have a button being added to the slider. We aren't going to be assigning a widget to our slider because we want to split the slider object up into 3 different parts when we're drawing it. So we should set up our variable definitions here. So we'll do that really quickly. So the width, we'll just say, let's just say 200, about 200, yep. And the height is going to be the same height as the sprite, which I think was 14. What else are we going to need? I think, let's have a look. Yeah. Alright, so those are the only, we can give it a boundary. So the boundary property on any widget basically restricts the boundary of that widget to not be able to go outside of its parent. So we're just saying stay within your parent, and yeah, so it won't go outside of that boundary. Okay, so we've created what we need. Now we need to render up the obj slider. Okay, so we want to, so everything in gm-widgets is native to all of the events. So the draw events and everything's the same as you would expect to do it in Game Maker. So we just need to inherit here, we just inherit the draw GUI event, and now we want to draw our sprite split up into 3 different parts. So we're going to do draw sprite part txt, and we're going to have to do this 3 times. So at the top, we're going to make sure, well, not at the top, but the first thing we want to draw is our SPR slider sidebar. and we want to make sure that the sub image is 0. The left will be 0. The top will also be 0. Now the width will be 3, so this is the size of, so what we're doing right now is we're getting this to sit on the side of the widget. So this is pretty straightforward stuff. A lot of you have already probably done this kind of thing before. The height is 6, 0 for the X, and then we want to say that our offset would, okay, so we actually have to set our offset as well in our variable definition. So let's go up here and offset Y, and we want to make this, I think we need to make this 4. Yeah, let's say 4. Yeah, 4. Okay. So we've got that. Now we need to, what was the next parameter? The scale. So we're obviously just sticking with the scale that we have here. So let's just do 1, and then the alpha is 1 as well. Okay. So now we want to do our middle part, which will be the actual bar itself. So this is the part that's going to be expanding. So this is the slider bar. 0, 0, 0, 1, 6. The X. So we want this to start at 3. So make sure it doesn't start on top of our other bar. Y will be the same, so we want to make sure we've got the same offset as the one above it. The width. So the width will be, so this is the scale, so this is how big it's going to be, because right now we've just got a 1, I think it's a 1 by 6, yeah, 1 by 6 line. It was actually this one that we'll be using there. And so we just need to make sure that we are stretching that out. Okay, so it'll be that, and we also need to account for the remaining pixels. So the width is not purely the width in the middle right now, it's the actual full width of the widget, so we have to minus off what the side parts are going to be. So we'll say 6 because it's just 3 by 3 on each one. Alright, so now these are all just default. Okay, so now we're going to need essentially the same thing here on the bottom, but instead of using the sub image 0, we're going to use sub image of 1. And what else are we going to need to change here? 3, 6, these should all be fine. We will need to change the X position. Yep. Okay. That won't need to change though. This will need to be the width minus 3, because we don't want it to span the entire way there. Okay, and then our sprite, that's fine. This should all be fine. Okay, so this is all the same. Okay, cool. So now we've drawn our sprite here. Okay, so we've got all the components on here. Now we need to make it so that the button here is draggable, so we can actually move the button down. So the cool thing about gm-widgets is we have all of the dragging functionality built in straight out of the box. So once you inherit the GUI widget or a widget OBJ widget, if you scroll down you'll see these properties here that you can make use of. So we want to make sure it's draggable. We want to update the draggable axis, so we only want this to be draggable on the x-axis. We don't want to be able to drag it on the y-axis, so we just uncheck the y-axis. That makes sure it only goes left and right. We can leave the default mouse start and mouse end, but what this is when do you want the dragging to start and when do you want it to end. So we can change those if we want. And you can also add multiple, like if let's say we want to make it the middle down button, can also move it, and then we just make sure we do the middle release there as well. So that'll work. Alright, so now it's movable. We should be rendering it, we should be drawing it. Assuming we haven't missed anything, we should then be able to draw this onto our demo. So let's go ahead and we'll remove all of these checkboxes from the last demo that I did, and we'll create a slider. in its place. So slider, we'll put it in the same position. Let's update the variable names as well. Slider. And we'll add it to our menu. Okay, so assuming I haven't forgotten anything, that should be good to go. Let's test it out. Okay, we can see it on here, and it's actually kind of... Oh, it's because I made it too big. We can actually scroll. Let's see. Whoops. Alright, so let's just make it a little bit smaller so it's not protruding out the sides there. We'll just make it 100. Okay, so there it is. There's a little slider, and you can see we're able to drag it. Now you'll notice we're not able to drag it up and down. We're only able to drag it left and right, and it's actually going outside of its boundary. So we can fix that really quickly now. If we come back into our button and we scroll down to boundary, and we just update the boundary here, and we make it parent. So now we're the boundary of our slider. So let's run that again, and you can see that working. There you go, boom, we have a slider. So that's cool. So now we have a slider, but now we want it to show some kind of an indicator of how far you've dragged it, what the value is, and we won't do the text, showing any text or anything like that, but we will update the sprite so that we can see the actual value updating. So let's come back to our draw function. So for this, we want to make sure we are storing some kind of selected amount. So we need to get the selected offset of our button. So button left dot offset x. So there's a bunch of variables built into gm-widgets that we'll be able to make use of, and I'm going to document all of these variables at some point soon. So hopefully that will be helpful for everybody that wants to use the library. I'll probably post about when I do that as well. I'll make a video. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that the selected value is greater than 2. We don't want to start applying the sprite part of the left-hand side. We don't want to start applying that before, like if you've only dragged a 1, we don't want it to update because it's actually 3 pixels, so I just say if it's greater than 2, then we can update that. Okay, so this is going to be essentially the same thing as this, except we're going to update the bar to be the highlight, so the highlight bar, and I think we don't need to update anything else in here. I think that should just be fine. Yep, so alright, so now we want to make sure we draw the middle part. Now this is the part that's going to be using the offset value to be drawn. And so let's make sure we use the update, sorry, the highlight bar. And what needs to change here? Let's have a look. I think it's just the width. I think we only need to update the width, which is the scale. So for the scale, we want to make sure we are getting the min value of the selected and the actual full width of the bar. That way we don't start to overflow out of the end of it. We can kind of clamp it a bit there. So selected, so whatever we've selected, and then we check the width minus 6, which is the padding of the 2 side bits. Okay, and now we just need to check the selected, is the selected width greater than the max width minus 4. So this will make sure that it updates once you've hit the end, basically. So once we've hit the end, we then want to draw this part. So this is the final part. And let's do the highlighted. And that should be the only change we need to make there. Alright, so let's test that out. So we should have an updating sprite as we drag it. And there's thunder in the background if you can hear it. There you go. Alright, we created a a slider in gm-widgets in 15 minutes. Not bad. And it's all fully draggable. You can get the value. If you printed out the value, you'd see the offset. In fact, we could do that. Let's print out the selected value. Now the value isn't scaled, so it won't, you know, if you want a percentage and things like that, you'll have to work out the percentage value yourself right now. Perhaps that's something we could add to the slider. So now if we drag it, see? So you can see the value updating down here. Boom. And so we can use that value for, you know, volume or whatever it might be. Alright, so that's been a quick little tutorial on how we can create a slider UI. Oh, shout out to is it Cat Punch Studios, Juna from Gentu's stream, who provided me the sprite to template this up. Yeah, alright, so that's all for this video. I hope it was helpful for anybody, and stay tuned for more videos in the future. Alright.